Ireland's still good enough to win the World Cup is not a thing that many Irish people feel at the moment. We've been a bit shellacked and shell-shocked from the last 12 months.
Yeah, I don't think anyone sort of wants to even say that anymore, and that probably suits the Irish mentality as well, that, you know, we have taken a step back and hopefully they'll find themselves with a bit of momentum before they go in, but they seem like a bit off at the moment, but there is still time, I think, to go.
What were the takeaways from the weekend game, with the obviously important one being Joey Carbery's injury?
Yeah, I mean, it was so unfortunate. He looked so fresh. Like, he missed so much rugby last season, and he looked, you know, extra fresh because probably he had missed so much. I think the best case scenario is he's going to be out for 4 weeks, worst case 6 weeks. So worst case scenario is he might be a doubt for the Scotland game, but I think they're fairly confident that he'll be fit.
So he's going to the World Cup and he'll be fit at some point during it, is the...
100%, and I think even if, let's say right now, they definitively said there's no way he'll play the Scotland game, I think there's still no question that Joey Carbery goes to the World Cup as Ireland's number 2. I think he is far too important. I think he gives you something that Ross Byrne and Jack Carty don't give you, and even Joe Schmidt was touching on it after the game. He can change the way Ireland attack, and I think when we get to the World Cup, we will need to do something different. We saw it again against Italy. There was a couple of times where they were just slow to give the ball out wide, you know, and they're going through the phases, and that's not going to work. I don't think, especially which people aren't really sort of focusing on yet, the conditions in Japan are going to be incredibly testing in that humidity, so this sort of, you know, phase after phase rugby isn't going to work. And you saw it with Chris Farrell's pull-back pass for Joey Carbery. You know, 9 times out of 10 Chris Farrell might have just trucked that up through the middle and then let's go to another phase, but just a little bit of invention close to the try line, you can see what a difference it makes. But I think for a first run out of the season, and considering the team that was played, I actually thought there was loads of takeaways in it. The game itself was poor, but I think if you went through every single position, we got an idea of something got to do with the World Cup. If you looked at the front row, I think Jack McGrath coming off after 40 minutes, and then Andrew Porter playing on the loose. I think Porter has cemented his place now as that 5th prop. I think it doesn't bode well for Jack McGrath. Dave Kilcoyne seems to have a bit of daylight there. It's been such a sort of amazing fall for grace for Jack McGrath that, you know, you think a couple of years ago he's a lion, and he just hasn't been able to find his form. I didn't think he played particularly poorly by any means, but Joe Schmidt said it was a pre-planned decision that he'd only play 40 minutes. I can't imagine he was too happy with that. Even in the second row, I thought Jean Klein, despite what a lot of people thought, and I'm not sure what they expect, and I was writing about it yesterday from a tight headlock. These guys are different to your all singing, all dancing James Rhines, Tyg Burns. He's there to do a job. Joe Schmidt has always wanted a big lumpy tight headlock, so I reckon John Klein has almost booked himself onto the plane there as well. You go to the
at the expense of who?
Well, I think the 4 locks are going. Your 3 are nailed on: James Ryan, Devin Toner, Ian Henderson. And I think John Klein is going to go as the 4th lock, but I think you have Tyg Byrne then. I think is going to go as a hybrid who can play both, which means then a likes of a Rhys Ruddock might miss out. That's just my opinion. I think this is just going on what Joe Schmidt. There's a reason why he's often picked Quinn Roux, you know, in squads. Especially when you think, when we come to the Samoa and Russian game, you know, 2 big meaty packs, they might not have much else. He's going to want someone like that, a big lump in the second row. And the scrum went really well, obviously against a poor Italy team, but a lot of that power is coming through the tight headlock, which was Klein. I think Byrne showed again why you can't leave a guy like this out. Ireland have lost so much poaching ability without Sean O'Brien and Dan Levy, and while I don't think Tyg Byrne is going to start, he, like Carbery, he gives you something else. You saw, like, Tommy O'Donnell didn't really get in the poached positions too often. Van der Flyer isn't really a poacher either. He will be the starting 7, but he's not really a poacher. I think that role will be left to O'Mahony, but I think Byrne gives you something else. But it would be so tough, I guess, to leave someone like Rhys Ruddock home. Even if you just move through the backline. Sorry, I'm pretty much going through it all here, but I just thought it was fascinating for such a poor game that there was so many talking points. I thought Marmion is such a favourite of Schmidt. You know, he does the nuts and bolts. I think he will go. I think Luke McGrath looked a bit sluggish at times, but you saw his intelligence with certain trail runs he was running. I think he has certainly enhanced his chances. I think Chris Farrell, of all people, of all players, made the most progress, and he's a very interesting case study. Joe Schmidt played such a massive role in getting him back to Ireland. You know, I think if he had his time over again, he might not have left Ulster as soon as he did. There was just a lot of traffic ahead of him at the time. But I remember talking to him, Chris Farrell, when he was with Grenoble at the time. Bernard Jackman was their head coach, and he was telling me that Joe Schmidt would get clips of his games sent back to him, and Joe Schmidt would be analysing his performances,
right,
and giving him, okay, this is what we would like you to do. This is sort of when the Munster move was on the horizon. So this is the level of detail that Joe Schmidt has gone in to get this guy, you know, up to speed in the systems. And it might just be smaller things, but a French match that no one's watching in the top 14, it just gives you an idea of how far and wide Schmidt cast the net. And I think Farrell playing 12 was really interesting, and what was key as well was that he played with Ringrose. You know, he wasn't thrown in with another rookie as well, because Ringrose is obviously your starting 13. He gave him a chance to play 12 alongside your 13, which gives him a better chance, I think, as well. And I thought he was really impressive.
So is Ringrose your guaranteed 13 and then Ringrose plus one?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that Gary Ringrose is your...
He loves himself, Robbie Henshaw, so is the Robbie Henshaw fullback experiment going to make another reappearance in these warm-ups?
Possibly, but I actually think Jordan Larmour actually looked extremely comfortable, more comfortable than probably we have seen him, because we've become so used to seeing him getting the ball and dancing around players, but he was actually stepping into the line a lot more, giving passes off both sides, which is obviously what Schmidt wants. We might see the Henshaw experiment again. I think we've left it a bit late now because it didn't work against England. That, you know, I think Carney and Larmour are your full-backs, and if Andrew Conway, the one thing I can never understand why Andrew Conway doesn't get more of a run at full-back. We saw it again at the weekend. He's just imperious under the high ball. You know, you talk about what Joe wants from a full-back. It's like one of the main things is to be good under the high ball. And I'm amazed that he doesn't get more of a run at full-back, particularly for Munster as well. But I think that's probably fed from the national team down, that the fact that Ireland see him as a winger, that Munster have sort of been playing him on the wing. So yeah, I think it's a bit late to be trying Henshaw. And I think you're also moving... Okay, there probably isn't much between him and Bundy Aki, but I still think Henshaw and Ringrose are your first choice partnership. So to move him out of position, you know, would sort of maybe, it might off kilter the team again, and he didn't look that comfortable, did he, against England? Is there an
implication if Chris Farrell comes that somebody else doesn't make it? And if Larmour is your nailed on second choice fullback, does that mean Andrew Conway is not going to make the squad, or does Conway get in because he also has that cover possibility?
I suppose there's a chance Bo can get in. I guess what we're hearing about Joey Carbery is the 4 to 6 weeks, but like, let's say that was more, or they are more concerned, then that has implications because of how many halfbacks they're going to take. If Carbery goes there with an injury, I don't see how you can travel with just 2 out halves. Whereas I think they might do it because, you know, you could have someone like a John Cooney who could get in there. But I think Chris Farrell, if it was to come down to Chris Farrell and Andrew Conway, while they're not in direct competition, I just think Farrell, you know, he can play the 12 and 13. And even Schmidt referenced after the Italy game at the weekend about Gary Ringrose playing on the wing. Now, he hasn't played on the wing since his Black Rock days, and you know, it's unlikely that he'll feature there, but this is the kind of thing that they're looking at. They want these guys to be playing more than one position, and I think Farrell just gives you so much as a 12 and a 13, because he is this big ball carrier, and like I said, that will be absolutely key in the 2 games against Samoa and Russia. You'd hope that, you know, the other centres will be fit for the first 2 games, but he also has that sleight of touch, which I just mentioned about for the Carbery try, which I think opposition players get so sort of hung up on trying to make a big hit on him, that he actually has that ability to put players into space. So yeah, like Conway and Farrell, they're definitely going for sort of the one place, if you know what I mean, but I think Farrell probably has the edge after his game of the weekend.
Okay, so who, if that's the case, then who are the replacement wingers? You've got Larmour's a replacement winger effectively.
Yeah.
He's in the squad as a back 3. And if Conway doesn't make it, you're going to start with Earls, you're going to start with Jacob Stockdale, and after that you've really only got Larmour. And that's when Ringrose plays a game on the wing or two?
The split is likely to be 17-14, so 17 backs, 14 forwards. So like
17 forwards.
17 forwards, yeah, 14 backs. So there is scope for both Conway and Farrell to go. I mean, you saw Dave Carney at the weekend, I'm not sure. I still think he has a long way to go. Mike Haley making his debut, he's got a long way to go, but you could easily have a likelihood where Farrell and Conway go. But I guess it just depends on sort of the halfback will have an implication on that too.
That's the extra one here, the injury to who is at the moment, is it
between Carty and Byrne?
Is it just a straight shootout between those two?
I think it is. I really think it is, but I think it's so hard to pick between them. It was interesting after the game last week, you know, Schmidt had kind of praised a lot of players, and he kind of pointed to Carty struggling to get to the pitch of the game. Now, thought it was a bit harsh personally. I thought he did okay when he came on.
Wow.
It was
Great.
It was a little bit harsh, and it was a bit of a sort of an insight into, you know, his way of thinking. I was watching the game back, and like, he put a lovely couple of kicks in. I don't know, would he have preferred maybe to give the ball out, but I think it's very tight between the two of them. And you know, I suppose we can't forget Sexton's injury profile as well, and then if Carbery's going there with a knock, you have to have a third out half. So I think it was Andy Dunn was on with you guys, I think, after the game, and he made a really good point about Sexton, and I think Wales are actually in a similar situation now with Garrett Anscombe being ruled out, that, you know, Dan Biggar is the obvious next choice, but how many games does Dan Biggar play now over the next few weeks? Because if he gets injured, you're in serious trouble.
But if he doesn't play games, he's going to be undercooked.
It's a catch-22, and that's why these games are they're horrible. They're absolutely horrible. So yeah, that's the balance I think that Schmidt's going to have, but I think we will definitely see Byrne and Carty get probably maybe even a little bit more game time, and well, of course they will get more game time, but especially to see that they will have to bring the third out half, so there will be more time for them. Yeah.
When it comes to England, and you look at their squad announcement yesterday, first of all, how big a risk is what Eddie Jones has done? How big a risk is it in terms of trusting untried and untrusted players?
Yeah, like when you consider the 4-year cycle that he's had to get this squad, it's amazing really that he has an uncapped player, Rory McConaughey, who was playing sevens up to last year and was actually playing club rugby before that. Like, a very interesting story. He won a silver at the Rio Olympics with Britain, but this guy has never played for England. And then you have 3 guys, Jack Singleton, Willie Hines and Lewis Ludlam, who only made their debuts against Wales. So these are 4 guys who like haven't been in and around the system, and yeah, like it is a risk. I don't think there's two ways about it, but you just wonder how England have got, with the talent and the depth that they have at their disposal, you'd wonder how they've gotten to a point where they are picking such inexperienced players. Now, this isn't to say that they aren't good players, but we just haven't seen them on the international stage to know how good they are. I suppose on the flip side of that is, was he supposed to revert back to like your Chris Robshaw or your Mike Brown, you know, these guys who've had their chance and it hasn't worked before? So on one hand, it's pretty admirable, but I'm not sure like how big of a role any of these 4 guys are actually going to play in the big games. But it is quite amazing that England, with the depth that they've had, are finding themselves in this situation.
Is it also a weird time to suddenly decide that you're a strict disciplinarian and you know, your players fighting is a big deal for you? Because it never struck me before that this was something Eddie Jones cared about.
Yeah, you'd wonder how serious that incident was, or what actually went on behind the scenes, because Ben Teo has been such a massive part of England, like since he moved over there.
Since he discovered he wasn't Irish/Australian.
And you know, he was in the 2008 World Cup squad for Samoa, and he played underage for New Zealand. So it would have been nice if he got another World Cup.
A true Renaissance man, Ben Teo.
Yeah, I mean, and he was like, remember that picture that was doing the rounds when he was playing with Leinster in the Ireland jersey?
Yeah.
So like, I mean. Yeah, I don't have too much sympathy for a guy like that, but at the same time, yeah, it is amazing. And I suppose probably the fitness of Manu Tuilagi has played a role in that, and you know, he has come back last season and looked like the player that he used to be, so that makes leaving Teo a little bit easier, but it's still a bit mad, isn't it?
If you put Tuilagi and the Vinipolas in the same team, suddenly England, I think, are close to being favourites.
Oh, they're even Gregor.
Especially now what happened with Wales.
Absolutely, like there's a reason why everyone is talking about England. Their power game is just freakish. Like I said, the Vunipolas, and they seem to have, okay, Teo's gone now, but they seem to have a relatively settled backline. I think one player who doesn't really get mentioned that much is Henry Slade. I think he's offered him a totally different dynamic at 13, and they seem to have a good balance. And I don't know if you've seen the videos that they're doing, the sort of behind the scenes videos throughout the summer. It's been really interesting, like 10-minute like sort of YouTube videos, and while of course they're going to paint everything in a good light, it does look like a very sort of happy camp, apart from obviously Teo and Mike Brown having their step to, but it does look like a very tight unit, and I think that they're justifiably going to go there as one of the favourites. Last
question for you: when is the final cut down? Will we know essentially what the World Cup squad is before the final cut down is made? Yeah,
for the England game, I think is the impression. So we were unlikely to see Ireland's team until the last game against Wales. That's, I think, when you'll see the squad will be named, and you'll also see like the full team, like what the team that's expected to start against Scotland. So a few more weeks, and obviously they're going to Portugal tomorrow for 8 days, so that'll give them another chance to fine tune for the conditions that I was talking about. And even it's interesting, Joe Schmidt, so Ireland's kick-off times for the home games are 2 p.m. and he picks 2 p.m. because that's technically the hottest point of the day. Now, it didn't quite work last Saturday with the rain, but this is a sort of meticulous detail that he's thinking about, that we want to play at the hottest part of the day, but the hottest part of the day in Dublin is a little bit different, I think, to what it's going to be like in Japan.
Yeah, especially with the weather that we've had last week or so. Cian, good stuff. Thanks very much for that. It's 31 minutes past 8 this morning. We're going to talk Spanish football and boxing with Gareth A. Davis later on this hour on OTB AM, but it's GAA next.